Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 248. The first article I thought about covering today was by an actuary who wanted to emphasize to people that hitting a magic retirement number was not the thing. Instead, you wanted to have these regular retirement paychecks. But in the article, even before he talked about the retirement paychecks, he talked about knowing what your retirement expenses were going to be and the importance of cutting expenses. That actually reminded me of one of the last things that people said that was discussed with me in college. One of the physics professors decided that it would be a good idea to have a lecture about what the biggest problems in the world were going to be. And in that lecture, he talked about energy, because a lot of the other problems, such as water purity, can be solved if you have more energy. And in particular with energy, they went through all these methods of generating clean energy, solar, ethanol, and so forth. And they more or less showed that it was really difficult, even with the current technology, to replace a lot of the carbon energy with renewable energy. And that by far the easiest way to free up more energy, was to free up more energy. It'd be to reduce consumption. And for retirement, that's also very true, is that, reducing consumption is by far, it's one of the biggest, easiest knobs to accomplish it successfully. For a lot of different reasons that we've discussed before. Anyway, didn't want to do that article because, kind of some of the same topics we talked about before. Wanted to do something a little bit different. So I found this one. And I like this article because it shows you the effects of a global event over 10 years, which isn't something that the average person really thinks about or considers on a daily basis. Not something that I think about or consider on a daily basis. But it's good for us to have a sense of this, to understand kind of the context of what's happening in our lives and how have these big events affected us and will affect us in the coming decades. Which, for me, it gives me a sense of okay, well, there's nothing I can do about a financial crisis that hurts me for decades to come. But I can save more and invest more to give myself a leg up for decades to come. Because if you don't think that you're fighting against anything, if you don't think that you're kind of trying to push back against a challenge, you're probably going to be less likely to push back against the challenge, to do more than you would otherwise do. All right, let's get going. Financial crisis of 2008 is still taking a bite out of your paycheck 10 years later. Some 10 years after the global finance system nearly collapsed under the weight of reckless mortgage lending, the U.S. economy is still feeling the impact, and the reverberations will continue for some time. Over the long term, the financial damage from the 2008 meltdown will cost every American roughly $70,000 during their lifetime, according to research published in August by the San Francisco Federal Reserve. The reason, the researchers say, is that the collapse of the global credit system a decade ago has permanently depressed the nation's gross domestic product by about 7 percentage points. This is a large number, San Francisco Fed economist Regis Barnachon and his co-authors wrote. Without the large adverse financial shocks experienced in 2007 and 2008, the behavior of GDP would have been very different. The result is that the capacity of the U.S. economy is smaller today than it would have been if the 2008 meltdown had never happened. That dampening effect can be seen in the annual economic forecasts that followed the financial crisis as the long-term damage took effect. One widely watched annual forecast from the Congressional Budget Office, for example, has been steadily downgraded for most of the last decade. And here we have it. Fading forecasts. The 2008 financial shock had a lasting economic impact. Until this year, annual GDP forecasts from the Congressional Budget Office have been steadily downgraded. That's just one way to measure the impact of the Great Recession, which ended in 2009. To see how the latest cycle compares with past downturns, CNBC looked at a variety of economic measures over the last 7 economic cycles since 1960. We tracked the data from the peak of one boom through the ensuing recession to the end of the next peak. GDP. Despite the recent uptick in strength, the pace of growth in gross domestic product in the current cycle has lagged every economic recovery since the 1960s. From the beginning of the Great Recession to the present, the economy has grown by about 17% after adjusting for inflation. That's far less than the economic expansions that ended in 2001, 1990, and 1969. Income. And we can look at this for a second. So these are real GDP, and each of the colored lines represents a different economic cycle. Income. Gross domestic product is just an accounting of the nation's output and income, including households, corporations, and other businesses. The dampening effect of the financial crisis of 2008 also depressed American households' income over the course of the last decade. In real terms, disposable personal income is up about 23% so far in the latest economic cycle. And you can see it is below all the others. Homeowner wealth. For American homeowners, the biggest hit from the 2008 meltdown came from the steep drop in home prices, which wiped out trillions of dollars in home equity before the housing market began recovering in 2011. It would take another 3 years to recover the overall losses in home equity, but millions of Americans whose homes were seized in foreclosure have yet to make up their losses. Overall, the gains in home equity still lag every other economic cycle in the last half-century, with the exception of the cycle that ended in 2007 as home prices were crashing. Corporate profits. Corporate profits also cratered in 2008, falling sharply as the economy slammed into reverse. Though profits have recovered in recent years, they are still well below the long-term gains seen in 3 of the last 7 cycles based on inflation-adjusted data for S&P 500 earnings provided by Yale economist Robert Shiller. Here we see real S&P 500 profits. Stock prices. Much of the attention on stock prices lately has focused on the records being set by market indices. A decade ago, that focus was on record-making losses. As a result, the overall market gain posted since the 2008 crisis has been about average for past economic cycles based on Shiller's inflation-adjusted data. It's been far less than the runaway market that produced the dot-com bubble of 2000 that helped bring the 1990s economic expansion to an end. Unequal gains. The gains in wealth and income over the past decade haven't been distributed evenly. The disparity in the growth of household income between rich and poor households has already been widening well before the 2008 crisis, but the financial upheaval accelerated the pace of income inequality. For those in the top 5%, incomes recovered quickly and have since grown at the fastest pace. Those in the bottom 20%, by contrast, saw their incomes fall in real terms and had barely recovered that lost ground by 2016. That's the latest census data available on income distribution. The rich got richer. The disparity in the growth of household income between rich and poor households had already been widening well before the 2008 collapse, but the financial upheaval accelerated the pace of income inequality. I gotta say, income has momentum, and wealth has momentum. And one reason why you want to save, one reason why you want to pursue a higher income is so that during the next financial shock, you don't have the bad options that these people have had. You want the good options. So, add that to the pile, add that to the list of reasons to save. Not only do you need to do it for retirement, but you also need to do it to avoid getting really screwed in down economic cycles. Job gains by sector. Personal financial recovery from the 2008 meltdown also depends on what each worker does for a living. Some sectors have seen strong job growth, for example, while others have lagged behind. Employment levels for the education and healthcare sectors, for example, are up more than 28%. The construction, information, manufacturing sectors, on the other hand, are still below employment levels seen in September 2008, according to the latest BLS data. This is interesting. I would have expected technology to be like higher, but is technology classified as information services? I'm not sure. Oh, let's see. What was that was scrolling? There we go. Okay. Weak wages. Wage growth has been extremely uneven from one part of the country to another. And while wages are generally higher in urban areas and on the east and west coasts, the growth of wages has been scattered throughout the country, according to the latest census county level data. Here's how job and wage growth in your county compare with the national averages. Let's see, so we got wages here. And we can choose a different state. Let's choose Georgia, just in case anybody from Georgia is watching, because I'm from Georgia. Oh no, I chose Alabama. Choose Georgia. There we go. So we got wages, and then we got jobs. They are not in sync. If we look at California, yeah, we got the North lost a bunch of jobs, but wages, and you can see, looks like San Mateo, Santa Clara counties, where I live, they've been doing pretty well in terms of wages. That's nice. All right, well, that is it for this article. I'm going to copy it and put it in the description when I upload it. Hope you enjoyed 5 Year Club video number 248. Have a fabulous evening.